Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the Meditations of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antonius. This is meditation number 7, translated by George Long. Number 7. And remember, he divides them into sub-meditations. 7.1. What is badness? It is that which thou hast seen often. Remember, he's writing this to himself. Not necessarily to others, but he's communicating with himself, and hence the word thou, the formal of you. Is it that which thou hast seen? It is that which thou hast seen, often seen. And on the occasion of everything which happens, keep this in mind, that it is that which thou hast often seen. Everywhere up and down thou wilt find the same things with which the old histories are filled, those of the Middle Ages and those of our own day, with which cities and houses are filled now. There is nothing new. All things are both familiar and short-lived. So I'm putting notes in the side now as we get into the next 6 with Marcus Aurelius. And this topic here is new, even though he starts with what is badness. But he's basically saying, if you've heard, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's biblical as well. But Marcus said it here. I think that was from the Book of Solomon. There's nothing new under the sun. Jimmy should have looked that up for you. You can look it up. There is nothing new. All things are both familiar and short-lived. Now, remember, when you're doing meditation reading, you should be thinking about these things. So you can put the recording on pause and just think about this sentence, like what is bad? And you see evil everywhere, right? Badness. You see it everywhere. You see it often. And what is it? Right? It's everywhere, up and down. You see the same things. History's filled with it, with evil. And then he concludes there's nothing new. All things are familiar and short-lived. Number 2, how can our principles become dead unless the impressions which correspond to them are extinguished? This is a profound question. How can our principles, what are your principles? The principles you live with. Remember, perhaps obey your father and mother, right? That's a principle. How can our principles become dead unless the impressions which correspond to them are extinguished? So George Long, the translator, puts these brackets, and he thinks you need the word thoughts to mean what he's saying by impressions. Now, you don't have to believe George. You can read this with the impressions, even though George says he thinks that better word might be thoughts. And remember, he's the translator, so he's giving us his opinion when he uses these brackets, which he uses throughout here. So Marcus is saying that the principles cannot die unless the impressions which correspond to them are extinguished. But it is in thy power, your power, continuously, he's talking to himself, to fan these thoughts into a flame. What thoughts? The principles, right? The impressions that cause principles. You can fan them into a flame. I can have that opinion about which I ought to have. I can have that opinion about anything which I ought to have. Jimmy gave this paragraph, this meditation, the word control. If I can what? Have an opinion about anything that I ought to have, why am I disturbed? The things which are external to my mind have no relation at all to my mind. There's the dash. He pauses, continues to write. Let this be the state of thy effects, and thou standest erect. So he's basically saying, this is the way you should think. To recover thy life is in thy power. Look at things again as thou didst use to look at them. For in this consists the recovery of thy life. This is very interesting. So he's basically saying control your thoughts, right? To recover your life is in your power. Look at things the way you used to look at them, that this use of them. For in this, in looking at them the way you're used to them, consists the recovery of your life. Which means if you don't do that, if you don't look at things the way you used to look at them, you lose your life. Number 3, the idle business of show, plays on the stage, flocks of sheep, herds, exercises with spears, a bone cast to little dogs, a bit of bread into the fish ponds, laboring of ants, and burden-carrying runnings about of frightened little mice, puppets pulled by strings. And then he's got a dash. George puts in all alike. I don't know if you need all alike, but basically he's saying these are all alike. So George is giving us a clue of what he's doing. But read again what Marcus is saying here. Plays on stage, flocks of sheep, blah, blah, blah. It is thy duty in the midst of such things to show good humor and not a proud air. To understand, however, that every man is worth just so much as the things are worth about which he busies himself. Self-identity. You've heard the saying, you are what you eat. Well, you are what you do. Every man is worth just so much as the things are worth about which he busies himself. Interesting, isn't it? Number 4, in discourse, thou must attend to what is said. And in every movement, you must observe what is doing. And in the one, thou shouldst see immediately to what end it refers. But in the other, watch carefully what does the thing signify. So I put this observation here. In discourse, when there's discourse, discussions, listen, right? And in movement, observe what is doing, what is happening in action. Actions speak louder than words, but you have to listen to words, right? Number 5, it is my understanding sufficient for this. Is my understanding sufficient for this or not? Remember, Marcus is meditating, talking to himself, writing himself. You should, ladies and gentlemen, keep a journal. That's what journaling is all about. When you keep a journal, you let your thoughts flow, you discuss things with yourself. Jimmy has kept a journal since he was 17 years old. He destroyed some of it in a fit of rage, but that's another story. Don't do that. Keep a journal. He's asking himself, is my understanding sufficient for this or not? Whatever this is, there's the pronoun, right? We want to understand pronouns. This equals what? What is this? Well, it could be anything. If it is sufficient, I use it, I use it. What's it? You know what I use what? It is understanding for the work as an instrument given by the universal nature. But if it is not sufficient, if my understanding is not sufficient, all right, for this, then either I retire from the work and give way to him who is able to do it better, unless there be some reason why I ought not to do so, or I do it as well as I can, taking to help me the man who, with the aid of my ruling principle, reason, can do what it is now fit and useful for the general good. You see what he's saying here? Is my understanding good enough? And if it is, right? If it is, I'll use it for the work of the universal nature, given by universal nature. But if it is not, if my understanding is not sufficient, I'm going to step away and give it to someone who'll do it better, unless by some reason I ought to not do so. or I do it as well as I can, taking to help me the man who, with the aid of my ruling principle, can do it now fit and useful for the general good. For whatsoever either by myself or with another I can do ought to be directed to this only, to that which is useful and well suited to society. And there's the rule right there. And Jimmy put in here duty. Whatever you do, whatever he's doing, Marcus is saying, whatever I do should be directed to this only. What's this? To that which is useful and well suited to society. Is that what you do, ladies and gentlemen? Is everything you do useful and well suited to society? Really? You've never done anything not useful? Waste of time? Number 6. How many, after being celebrated by fame, have been given up to oblivion? And how many who have been celebrated the fame, how many who have celebrated the fame of others have long been dead? You know, sometimes Marcus Aurelius is, he's got, these meditations are sometimes depressing, aren't they? Right? If we read the last one here, how many, after being celebrated by fame, have been given up to oblivion? And how many who have been celebrated, has celebrated the fame of others, have long been dead? So I wrote in here fame. Say fame is fleeting, isn't it? Fame is fleeting. Number 7. Be not ashamed to be helped, for it is thy business to do thy duty, like a soldier in the assault on a town. And how then, if being lame, thou canst not mount up on the battlements alone, but with the help of another, it is possible. This is very important. It's called helping, cooperation. If you read the analysis of the first 6, you're going to see some quotes from Gene Kranz and Jim Lovell that talk about this. Be not ashamed to be helped. I used to have a saying in my business, you should raise your hand for 2 reasons. 1, you need work, which, you know, right? Or you need help. Most people don't want to raise their hand when they need help, whatever, for whatever reason. Although sometimes that changes. Can you help me? So you got to help. He who helps themselves help, whatever the saying is. Put your mask on first, says the airline pilot, right? If the airline masks come down, put it on you first before you can help another. But do not be ashamed to be helped. It is thy duty, like a soldier in the assault on a town. It is thy business to do your duty. So how then can the lame do their duty except with the help of another? What is duty? That could have been another subject here, right? But it's really, don't be ashamed to be helped. Number 8. Let not future things disturb thee, for thou wilt come to them. And if it shall be necessary what? To be disturbed, having with thee the same reason which now thou usest for present things. So don't let future things disturb you, for thou wilt come to them. You're going to get there. You're going to get there. If it shall be necessary, having with thee the same reason which now thou usest for present things. In other words, don't be afraid of the future, because you're gonna get there. And you're gonna get there with the same reason, the ruling faculty that you have now. So I put fear here, overcoming your fear. Number 9. All things are implicated with one another, and the bond is holy. And there is hardly anything unconnected with any other thing. We are all together was a Beatles song, right? For things have been coordinated, and they combine to form the same universe. For there is one universe made up of all things, and one God who pervades all things, and one substance, and one law, common reason in all intelligent animals, and one truth. And if indeed there is also one perfection for all animals, which are of the same stock and participate in the same reason. So I wrote oneness here. Everything is coordinated. We are all together. We are all together right now. We are all one. You believe that? That there's nothing not connected? Number 10. Everything material soon disappears in the substance of the whole, and everything formal is very soon taken back into the universal reason. And the memory of everything is very soon overwhelmed in time. Jimmy wrote ephemeral. Everything is fleeting, right? Fleeting. Nothing lasts forever. Everything disappears. The formal is soon taken back to the universal reason, and the memory of everything is very soon overwhelmed in time. So how do we explain the meditations? They've lasted pretty long. Well, if somebody or everybody stops reading them, then we could see what he's talking about. It would be a shame. It'd be a shame. Number 11. To the rational animal, the same act is according to nature and according to reason. To the rational animal. We've talked about this in other meditations with Marcus. We're rational animals and other animals are not rational. But to the rational animal, the same act is according to nature and reason, because you're a rational animal. Number 12, be thou erect or be made erect. Jimmy put a line here. He didn't even say the word here because this is pretty self-explanatory. Be erect or be made erect. What does that mean? We're not talking dirty here, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about standing tall, being erect, standing straight, or be made to stand straight. How do you make someone stand straight? Huh? Do you beat it out of them? Number 13. Just as it is with the members in those bodies which are united in one, so it is with rational beings which exist separate, for they have been constituted for one cooperation. So just like it is with people, united in one, so it is with things separate because they're designed to cooperate. And the perception of this will be more apparent to you if thou often sayest to thyself, I am a member of the system of rational beings. But if thou sayest that thou art a part apart, then thou dost not yet love men from thy heart. Beneficence does not yet delight thee for its own sake. Beneficence, goodness. Thou still dost it barely as a thing of proprietary and not yet as doing good to thyself. I ignored all the brackets by George because he's got a lot of brackets here explaining what those words are in Greek. So what is number 13 about? I put down point of view. So he believes that rational beings are created to cooperate. And if the perception of this will be more apparent to you if you say to yourself, I am a member of the system of I'm rational. I'm not an animal. But if you say to yourself that you're only a part, then you don't really love men from your heart. I'm only a part. You're not part because you say you're a part, but you're really not. You're all of it. We are all together. I am a member of the system of rational beings. Beneficence, it's very difficult for me to pronounce that word, does not yet delight thee for its own sake. Number one. George says he's used this conjecture of the word instead of the common reading. I can't read Greek, so I ignored that footnote. But he's saying this other guy, Gattaker, another translator, thou still does it barely as a thing of proprietary, and you don't do it yet as a good to thyself. In other words, you don't understand the nature of a rational being if you think you're just a part of it. Huh. Number 14. Number 14, let there fall externally what will on the parts which can feel the effects of this fall. For those parts which have felt will complain if they choose. But unless I think that what has happened is an evil, I am not injured. And it is in my power not to think so. Events. Do you let events control you, or do you control your reaction to events? Let there fall externally what will in parts and can feel the effects of this fall. But those parts which have felt will complain if they choose. But I think that what has happened is an evil. I'm not injured. I think that what has happened is an evil, unless I think that. I'm not injured. It's in my power to control that. So you control your reaction to events. Events do not control you. Number 15. When whatever anyone does or says, I must be good. Just as if the gold or the emerald or the purple were always saying this. Whatever anyone does or says, I must be emerald and keep my color. Think about this. I put goodness here. So whatever anyone says or does, I must be good. Just like gold or emerald and purple, we're saying this. Whatever anyone does or says, I must be an emerald and keep my color. That's a fantastic statement, right? Kind of matches the other meditation. Number 16, the ruling faculty does not disturb itself. I mean, does not frighten itself or cause itself pain. And he's got a little note here, but I don't know what those crosses mean. So the ruling faculty, yourself, your reason, who you are, does not disturb itself. I mean, corrects himself, does not frighten itself or cause itself pain. But if anyone else can frighten or pain it, what's it? What's it? The ruling faculty, yourself. Let him do so. For the faculty itself will not, by its own opinion, turn itself into such ways. Let the body itself take care, if it can, that it suffer nothing, and let it speak if it suffers. But the soul itself, the ruling faculty, reason, which is the subject to fear, to pain, which has completely the power of forming an opinion about these things, will suffer nothing, for it will never deviate into such a judgment. The leading principle, yourself, right? Your reason, the leading principle in itself wants nothing unless it makes a want for itself, and therefore it is both free from perturbation and unimpeded if it does not disturb or impede itself. Marcus is always trying to talk about things that are going on in his life and how he relates to it and the ruling faculty. So I put reason over here because that's what he's trying to do. He's always thinking about his relationship to the world, his relationship to other people. 17. Eudaimonia, eudaimonia, happiness. Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Is a good demon or a good thing. What then art thou doing here, O imagination? Go away, I entreat thee, by the gods as thou didst come, for I want thee not. But thou art come according to thy old fashion, and I am not angry with thee. But just go away. Virtue is at the core of his thing, right? Happiness is a good thing, but then here comes the imagination to screw things up. Isn't that true? Doesn't that happen when we start imagining what might happen, what might not happen? So remember, he's writing these meditations. So the next time you start thinking about stuff that's conflicting you or making you think something's really going to happen badly, read number 17. Read number 17, 717, and think about what he says. Number 18. Is any man afraid of change? Why, what can take place without change? What then is more pleasing or more suitable to the universal nature? And canst thou take a bath unless thou wood undergoes a change? And canst thou be nourished unless the food undergoes a change? And can anything else that is useful be accomplished without change? Dost thou not see then that for thyself also to change is just the same and equally necessary for the universal nature? Don't you love the way he thinks? This, I titled this Change, but basically, he says, who's afraid of change? And why are you afraid of change? What can take place without change? What's more pleasing than change or more suitable than change? Well, Jimmy, can you really change? So haven't you told us in the past that you can't really change? Well, you really can't, but you can. And you do, but you don't. Jimmy, you're talking in riddles. It's crazy. No, think about what he's saying. You change all the time, but dost thou not see that for yourself also to change is the same and equally necessary? Think about this. Think about this. Number 19. Through the universal substance, as through a furious torrent, all bodies are carried, being by their nature united with and cooperating with the whole as the parts of our body with one another. Remember, he's talked in the past about your hands, your feet, your jaw, right? Your upper and lower, your teeth. Things were made for cooperation through the universal substance as though a furious torrent, right? Be carried away, blah, blah, blah. How many us Chrysippus? How many a Socrates? How many an Epictetus has time already swallowed up? And let the same thought occur to thee with reverence to every man and thing. And George here, it's interesting, he puts a parenthesis. So if you go back to meditation number 5, number 23, meditation number 6, number 15, this thought about time is expressed in those. And it's expressed in many, many, many other meditations. He's basically saying everything is carried away, change is happening, the whole, the parts. How many of these people are swallowed up by time? Isn't that the truth? Where does time go? One thing only, number 20, one thing only troubles me, lest I should do something which the constitution of man does not allow, or in a way which it does not allow, or what it does not allow now. Ooh. We're going to read that again, but Jimmy wrote doing wrong. Number 20. One thing only troubles Marcus Aurelius. One thing. What is the thing? That I should do something which the constitution of man doesn't allow, or in the way which it does not allow, or what it does not allow now. That's a tongue twister. Say that 5 times. I think he's talking about doing wrong. That's what he doesn't want to do wrong. And what's wrong for Marcus Aurelius? Injuring men, not being patient, those things. We can talk about that in the analysis. But that's what troubles him. He doesn't want to do wrong. What about making a mistake, Jimmy? Well, I just had a situation where someone was afraid to make a decision because they didn't want to make a mistake. So they were going to quit their job. They announced they're going to retire. The boss didn't want them to retire, so the boss kept hemming and hawing. And basically, the person said that they didn't want to make a mistake. That was the reasoning of this person. They don't want to make the decision because they don't want to make a mistake. So Jimmy said, you're going to make a mistake. No matter what you do, eventually you're going to make a mistake. So A, get over it, but B, learn to live with your mistakes, but even more important, think things through before you do them. Just like Marcus said here, what bothers this guy? The one thing only troubles him, that he should do something which the constitution of man does not allow, which if you examine his meditation and he draws up what the constitution of man is comprised of, it's being virtuous, helping others, listening, all these attributes, characteristics, right? So what he's talking about is he just doesn't want to do wrong. I think. What do you think? Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Email me. Number 21. Near is thy forgetfulness of all things, and near the forgetfulness of thee by all. So fame, you don't remember everything all the time. And guess what? Not everybody's going to remember you. Why is a lot of these have to do with fame for Marcus Aurelius? Why is that? Well, first of all, he's the emperor, right? He's got a legacy. But what is fame? Fame is fleeting, don't forget. Number 22, it is peculiar to man to love even those who do wrong. What? It is peculiar to man to love even those who do wrong. And this happens if when they do wrong, it occurs to you, that they are kinsmen, and that they do wrong through ignorance and unintentionally, and that soon both of you will die. And above all, that the wrongdoer has done thee no harm, for he has not made thy ruling faculty worse than it was before. This is one of the most profound thoughts, and frankly, a disturbing thought for Jimmy personally to think about. But I want to go over it again with you to see if you agree or disagree. It is peculiar to man to love even those who do wrong. That's that's a bold statement, but it's a true statement. You see it in your own lives, right? With the people you know. So man can love those who do wrong. Who is the great lover of those who do wrong, right? Jesus. Even if you don't believe in him, if you read the Bible, it's story, right? And this happens. What's this? The pronoun. What is this? It's when you love someone who does wrong. It happens if when they do wrong, it occurs to you that they are kinsmen and that they do wrong through ignorance and unintentionally, and that soon both of you will die. So what is Marcus saying here? He's saying you it, doing wrong, you can love someone who does wrong. Why? Well, they're kinsmen, they're part of us, part of the whole, part of the rational animals. And then they do wrong. Why do they do wrong? Because they're ignorant and it's unintentional. One of the reasons this is a difficult meditation for Jimmy is because of the nature of evil. What is evil, right? Not necessarily doing wrong, which could be evil, but maybe not, because in what he says, Marcus, is that they're just ignorant and they do wrong unintentionally. So let's say they steal something or they cheat on a test or whatever. So he's saying that you can love these people regardless if they cheated or lied, right? If they stole or lied, you can love them because they did that, they stole or lied because they're ignorant and they did it unintentionally. What about hurting another person, whether mentally or physically? Okay, and he's saying you can love them because both of you will die. There's that death again. And above all, that the wrongdoer, the person who lied, cheated, stole, hurt someone, has done you no harm, for he has not made thy ruling faculty worse than it was before. So he didn't hurt you. Well, you've heard of the butterfly effect, that when a butterfly flaps his wings in the sea, it creates a tornado in the north or whatever. I don't know if this is the time to discuss this, but there's a philosophy that everything someone does, and this is part of what Marcus is teaching us, whatever we do affects everyone else, no matter if they're there or not. In other words, if somebody lies or cheats or steals or hurts someone, they actually hurt you, and you're part of that. And you could be what is to prevent you from believing that if you were just a better person, that that other person may not have lied, cheated, stole, hurt someone. I don't know. This is a very excellent meditation to think about. And and you should think about it. Well, Jimmy, I don't want to think about it. Well, then just fast forward the recording. But you should. I saw a father reaming out his kid in a supermarket one day, and just the kid must have been 10 or 11, and this father was just yelling at this kid. Oh, stupid. He's calling him names. And the kid's just standing there with his head down, obviously embarrassed because his father's shouting. Everybody could hear him. And I almost went up to the father and told him to calm down. This is a little kid. No matter what he did, you don't have to do this. But I didn't, because it only lasted for maybe 10 seconds. And then the father grabbed the kid and they went back in line or whatever, or wherever they went into the store. It's at a supermarket. I never forgot that. That happened. It had to be 30 years ago. It's one of the profound images in my mind. And it sparks a lot of meditations of my own. What caused that father to react like, if it was his father, I'm making assumptions, to react like that to the kid. What did the kid do? Why did they react like that? Why did he take it public like that? What was wrong? And so you start, your imagination, like Marcus just said, starts reacting and saying, but I was curious about that. And that's what this is, makes me curious here. Can you love someone who does wrong? Because what is evil? Evil to me is not doing the wrong out of ignorance or unintentionally. Evil, real evil is doing things because you're smart and intentionally. and you lie intentionally, and you cheat intentionally. You know it's wrong, but you do it. I don't know how you tell the difference. Number 23, the universal nature out of the universal substance, as if it were wax, now molds a horse. And when it has broken this up, the horse, it uses the material for a tree, and then for a man, and then for something else. And each of these things subsists for a very short time. Universal nature out of universal substance, as if it were wax, creates a horse, tree, man, something else. This is titled The Nature of Things. But it is no hardship for the vessel to be broken up, just as there was none in being fastened together. Okay, what the heck is he talking about? I think there's Buddhists that believe that you just transfigure yourself, transform into something else. Your spirit transforms itself. Whatever. He's saying, Marcus is saying everything goes back to the pot and it gets reshaped into something else. And that's what creates everything and keeps the world going on. By the way, I put a definition of here, eudaimonia is the state of being that's fulfilling the rich and is achieved when a person is virtuous and their actions are based on reason and truth. And that word was chosen by Marcus and translated by George to mean this because he was a Stoic and he was concerned with being virtue. But in this case, he's saying everything is broken up and it comes back. For it is no hardship for the vessel to be broken up, just as there was none in it being fastened together. That's the nature of the universe, which is why I titled this The Nature of Things. Now, you don't have to believe that, but if you're, depending on your religion or whatever you believe, you can believe nothing. But Marcus, believes this, or he's putting this down. Why? Well, he's a soldier, he's an emperor, he fights all the time, he knows he's going to die. Maybe he wants to think he'll come back as a horse. I'm kidding. Number 24. A scowling look is altogether unnatural. When it is often assumed, the result is that all comeliness dies away and at last is so completely extinguished that it cannot be again lighted up at all. Try to conclude from this very fact that it is contrary to reason. What's it? A scowling look. For if even the perception of doing wrong shall depart, what reason is there for living any longer? Jimmy put a question mark here. So he's saying scowling is not natural. And then George got a note here. This is corrupt. What does that mean? This section is corrupt. He couldn't translate it properly. You'll see a lot of that in the Meditations. That it's a corrupt. It didn't get through the centuries, so it's corrupt. So he's guessing sometimes at what it says. And in this case, he's saying the result is that comeliness dies away and at last so completely extinguished that it cannot be again lighted up at all. So you scowl all the time, you're angry all the time. So instead, he says, try to conclude that scowling, is contrary to reason. And then he says, for if even the perception of doing wrong shall depart, what reason is there for living any longer? He doesn't want to do anything wrong. And even the perception of that, why would you go on living? Wow. Sorry, took a drink of water. Number 25. Nature which governs the whole will soon change all things which thou seest. and out of their substance will make other things, and again other things from the substance of them, in order that the world may be ever new. Change, change. Same thing that happens in the one we just saw over here, the one we just read, number 23, right? This is pretty much the same thing as we're talking about, change. Number 26. When a man has done thee any wrong, immediately consider with what opinion about good or evil he has done wrong. Let me repeat that. When a man has done thee any wrong, immediately consider with what opinion about good or evil he has done wrong. For when thou hast seen this, you will pity him, and will neither wonder nor be angry. For either thou thyself thinkest the same thing to be good that he does, or another thing of the same kind. It is thy duty then to pardon him. If thou dost not think such things to be good or evil, that thou wilt more readily be well disposed to him who is in error. If you don't think such things to be good or evil, you'll be more readily disposed to pardon him, to forgive, forgiveness. So what does that mean? When a man has done thee wrong, what does that mean? All right, he stole from you. You should immediately consider with what opinion about good or evil he has done wrong. In other words, does he think stealing was wrong? Because when thou hast seen this, when you realize that, put yourself in his position, you won't be angry. You'll pity him. And you'll neither wonder nor you'll be angry. For either thou thyself thinks the same thing to be good that he does, or another thing of the same kind. So it's your duty to pardon him. Many years ago, I was a teacher and I had a nice life insurance policy with a certain company. And one of the teachers at the high school I taught at wanted to become a salesman for this insurance company. And one day, my dad had bought me this $10,000 life insurance policy. And one day I got home and there was a letter from the insurance company saying that my loan had been approved and here are the terms. Thank you very much. We look forward to your repayment. And by that time, my dad had bought that when I was in high school. So it was already maybe, I don't know, 10 years old. So it had some equity. But someone had taken a loan out on it. Now, it wasn't me. And I had just gotten married. I could have used the money, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't my wife, and it wasn't my father who bought me the insurance policy. So I called up the broker, who happened to be this ex-teacher that I used to work with. And he said, "Oh, I was meaning to call you about that." I said, "What do you mean?" And he told me on the phone that he had forged my name to take out the money. Can we meet? I said, "You did what?" "I forged your name because I needed the money. Can we meet?" I said, "Of course." So I hung up the phone, got in the car, and drove to a coffee shop. And we met. And the guy was nervous, of course, embarrassed, of course, and he didn't know what to do. So I just said, "Anthony, what possessed you? What possessed you to do this? You forged my name, which is a crime. You committed a crime. And all I got to do is open my mouth, and you're going to go to jail." And he looked at me and he said in a tone, which again, I'll never forget, he said, "I was desperate. I was desperate. I'm going to put the money back, next week immediately. I just needed it. I just needed it right away." So are you saying I wasn't no, I did this to 3 people. You're one of them. I said, "Well, I'm pretty lucky then." Huh? And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I thought for a minute and I said, I'll tell you what, because the way he said, I was desperate. Now, the word desperate is an interesting word. I was an English major teaching English at the time. I studied words. I love words. I still love words. I'm trying to teach you words. But when I heard the word desperate come out of his mouth, I thought about that word desperate. What would you do? What would you do if you were desperate? What would you do? What causes desperation? These things flashed through my mind very quickly. I didn't have the time to think about it too much. And I just looked at them and I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Here's a pad of paper. I want you to write out exactly what you did, how you did it, why, you don't have to tell me why you did it, but what you did. Sign it, and I'm going to take that piece of paper with me. If the money's not back by Monday morning or whatever the day it was, I forgot. I gave him a few days. If the money's not back, paid off with, the interest that they charge for that, back into the account, then I'm going to turn this letter over to the authorities. And he was just so grateful. He started, I swear to God, I saw tears in his eyes. And he said, thank you, we parted. The money came back, and I never talked to him again. I think, I think that's what he's talking about here. I think. I hadn't read Marcus Aurelius at the time, but when I read this meditation, I thought that's probably what he had in mind. Now, most people probably would have thrown, they would have reported him. The guy goes to jail. His whole life takes a different turn. And I don't know what the other two people did. I have no clue because I just didn't follow up, nor was I interested. Perhaps I should have been, but I know what I did. And forgiveness is a difficult concept. It's in the Bible. We'll talk about forgiveness sometime. 27. Think not so much of what thou hast not as of what thou hast. Think not so much of what thou hast, not as of what thou hast. Huh? But of the things which thou hast, select the best. And then reflect how eagerly they would have been sought if you had them not. Think not so much of what you have not as what you have as of what you have. Don't think about what you don't have, think about what you have. But of the things which you have selected the best, right? And then reflect how eagerly they would have been sought if you didn't have them. And at the same time, however, take care that you do not, through being so pleased with these things, accustom yourself to overvalue them, so as to be disturbed if you should ever not have them. Satisfaction, don't get attached to things. Don't get attached to things. It's an interesting thing because some people are attached to things. One of the things people get attached to is money, right? Oh God, I need money. Money. Huh. Number 28, retire into thyself. The rational principle which rules has this nature, and that it is content with itself when it does what is just, and so secures tranquility. That's an important word to Marcus Aurelius. You should look it up, tranquility, right? Introspection. Look at yourself, go into yourself, think about yourself, retire into thyself. Number 29, wipe out the imagination. Remember how he was just telling the imagination, take a hike, the other meditate. Wipe out the imagination and stop the pulling of the strings. Confine thyself to the present. Understand well that what happens either to thee or to another, and divide and distribute every object into the casual and the material. Causal, casual, and the material. Think of thy last hour. Let the wrong which is done by a man stay there where the wrong was done. These are rules to live by, right? Forget the imagination. Jimmy, are you saying I can't be creative? No, 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 no. That's not what he's saying. The imagination is that part of us that think about the future or the past. Oh my God, I wish I had a wishing well, right? Stop the pulling of the strings. Confine yourself to the now. Understand well what happens to you and to another. These are rules to live by. Write them down. Think about them. Try to practice that. Try to practice that. Think about that last hour. Think about, there's that death again, right? Why should I, Jimmy, why should I think about my last hour? Well, it puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Don't forget, he says it doesn't, you shouldn't be thinking you're going to live 10,000 years. Number 30, direct thy attention to what is said, and let thy understanding enter into the things that are doing and the things which do them. In other words, listen. We talked about that in the first analysis of the first six. Listening is very, very, very important. Listening. Because you can get distracted. I'm sure some of you have already stopped listening to me, which is fine. It's just fine. I'll get you back, or I won't. Number 31. Adorn thyself with simplicity and modesty, and with indifference towards the things which lie between virtue and vice. Love mankind. Follow God. The poet says that the law rules all, and it is enough to remember that the law rules all. And George says the end of this is unintelligible. So he's guessing at what the end of it is, or he left it off. I put simplicity here. Be simple, modest, indifference towards things which lie between virtue and vice. Be indifferent to those things. Well, Jimmy, what's he saying here? Well, if you know what is virtue and vice, those are the two ends of the spectrum, and he's saying forget about what's in between and just be simple and modest and be indifferent. You know, Nietzsche said indifference is the greatest insult in the world to anyone. It's worse than hating them. It's worse than beating them if you're just indifferent. Think about that. Think about what Nietzsche said in relationship to Marcus Aurelius. Think with indifference on things which lie between virtue. Look at this beautiful picture I just bought, Jimmy. And, you know, okay, it's beautiful to you. And, okay, should I be indifferent to that? If you're indifferent to that, when somebody just told you that, look at this beautiful picture I just bought. And you say, oh, the person might punch you. Love mankind. Really? How can you love evil? That mankind's full of all good, evil, bad, indifferent, all this stuff. Follow God. Jimmy, there's a mistake, right? He's a Roman. There's many gods. Why does he have one God? Well, if you read the Meditations with Jimmy, you'll know that he mixes it up. Sometimes there's a lot of gods, and sometimes there's this God with a capital G. And the poet says that law rules all, and it is enough to remember law rules all. Does it? Number 32, about death. Whether it is a dispersion, your atoms are dispersed, or a resolution into atoms, or annihilation, death is either extinction or change. I would say that sums it up because, first of all, I don't know anybody who came back from the dead. Do you? Well, isn't there a story in the Bible about Lazarus, Jesus raising Lazarus? Well, yeah, it's a good story. I didn't see it, right? You didn't see it. I don't know anybody who died and came back to life. I don't. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe. If you're Catholic, for example, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe. You believe whatever you want. I'm just saying that if we're going to understand what Marcus Aurelius believes, this is what he believes about death. And he writes a lot about death, doesn't he? Why? Well, because he's the emperor and he's at war all the time. So it's either extinction or it's changed into something else. Uh, Pain, about pain. The pain which is intolerable carries us off, right? If you've ever experienced intense pain, I had periodontal surgery once, and as a young man, I never brushed. I didn't care, as a former smoker and all that. I think this was when in my early 30s, but I had this my gums kept bleeding, so I needed periodontal disease. So I found a great periodontist. He operated on me, and I told him afterwards, I said, I would like to write an article about my experience. Would you co-author it with me? He was a smart guy. He was an attorney and a periodontist. He had a law practice. He was very gifted. And he said, I'd love to do that. It's very, what the hell? What's a little publicity, right? I was a writer. So I did the periodontal surgery and I wrote the article and I brought it to him on the follow-up visit. And I said, I did the piece, and here it is. And, maybe we'll a double byline, you and me. And he read it in front of me because it was only a couple of pages, right? Maybe 500, 800,000 words, whatever. He says, you can't publish this. I, I go, why? He said, because no one would come to me. What do you mean? I said, what do you mean? You did a great job. You cured me, right? Because he says, but you described the pain so vividly. I said, well, it hurts. I had adjectives, ladies and gentlemen. And when I read Marcus Aurelius, I read him the first time, and now I'm rereading him with you. Pain which is intolerable carries us off. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever had periodontal surgery, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't imagine anything worse. Perhaps if I were a woman, childbirth, I don't know. I can't imagine that's an easy task. But pain, which is intolerable, carries us off. But that which lasts a long time is tolerable. This is a very interesting couple of sentences. That which lasts a long time is tolerable. And the mind maintains its own tranquility by retiring into itself. And the ruling faculty is not made worse, but the parts which are harmed by pain, let them, if they can, give their opinion about it. Whatever lasts a long time becomes tolerable. Man gets used to everything. Dostoevsky, one of the most famous quotes, one of the laws of life. Man gets used to everything. The mind maintains its own tranquility by retiring. This is a little meditation on how to handle pain. Maybe he was wounded when he wrote this. I would have loved to meet him. Number 34, about fame. Look at the minds, observe what they are and what kind of things they avoid and what kind of things they pursue, and consider that as the heaps of sand piled on one another hide the former sands, so in life the events which go on before are soon covered by those which come after. You can read 1,000 books, ladies and gentlemen, and 1,000 classics, and you will not find fame described better than in these words. In life, events which go before are soon covered by those which come after, the sands of time. Number 35, from Plato. And George gives you the volume of Plato. So don't forget, Marcus is a very well-read guy. The man who has an elevated mind and takes a view of all time and of all substance, dost thou suppose it is possible for him to think that human life is anything great? Is it not possible, he said, and then there's a dash. Such a man then will think that death also is not evil, is no evil. Then there's a dash, certainly not. This is a section from Plato's book, right? The man who takes an elevate, who takes a broad view, the 30,000-foot level, human life is anything great. It's not. We're a speck, right? Point of view. Everything is point of view. From Anasthenes, and this is from, it is royal to do good and to be abused. Justice. That's what I think it means. I don't know. Number 37. It is a base thing for countenance to be obedient and to regulate and compose itself as the mind commands, and for the mind not to be regulated and composed by itself. Appearances deceive. Number 38. It is not right to vex ourselves at things, for they care not about it. This is from Euripides. It is not right to get angry or, to vex ourselves at things. Don't get ticked off at stuff, for they care not about it. Number 39. To the immortal gods, and give us joy. It's a thought. Number 40. Life must be reaped like the ripe ears of corn. One man is born and another dies. And he's saying this is from Euripides and Cicero. If gods care not for me and for my children, there's a reason for it. Right? Hurricane just missed us. Hurricane went up and hit above us, right? A couple hours from our home. Why did that happen? If the gods care not for me and my children, there's a reason for it. Likewise, if they care for me and my children, there's a reason for it. For the good is with me and the just. And he says, this is from Aristophanes. We read Lysistrata by Aristophanes on this website. So these seem to be quick pops of thoughts. No joining others in their wailing, no violent emotion. Don't join others in their wailing. And then from Plato, these here seem to be from stuff he's been reading, right? From Plato, the Apology. But I would make this man a sufficient answer, which is this. Thou sayest not well if thou thinkest that a man who is good for anything at all ought to compute the hazard of life and death, and should not rather look to this only in all he does, whether he is doing what is just or unjust and what works of a good or a bad man. So you should read this a couple of times, and we will be reading Plato, so we'll get into it more. I put question marks. It would take an hour to discuss this. We're going to stop at 45, and then we're going to continue in a separate reading. Okay, number 45. And he puts a footnote here, 3, from the Apology. For thus it is said, men of Athens, in truth, that whenever a man has placed himself thinking it the best place for him, or has been placed by a commander, there, in my opinion, he should stay, and to abide the hazard, taking nothing into the reckoning, either death or anything else before the baseness. So in other words, whole duty on our country, duty. Wherever your orders take you, just follow your orders. right? Okay, we're going to stop there. Number 45. You've been reading with Jimmy. Learn more about Marcus Aurelius. Come back for part 2 of number 7 of the seventh meditation by Marcus Aurelius by watching additional videos on the website. You can also visit and read other classics like The House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And if you have a question, comment, whatever you want. You want to rag on me, you want to yell at me, whatever you want to do. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Thanks so much for being there.